Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Just Two Dads with my co-host, Shawn Francis. I am Brian Altunian. Today, we've got a very special episode, something that I think will hit you in the heart and in the soul at the same time as we're talking to a special guest who's dealing with issues around our children. And as you know, our podcast here is dedicated to folks who have special needs family members, and especially our children. Today is going to be an extra special, heart-wrenching, hopefully heart-feeding and heart thriving episode. I don't know. I'm already prepping that I'm going to cry in this episode. I don't know why, but without further ado, here, welcome to another episode of Just Two Dad. Welcome again, everybody. I have to say it. Here I say I wasn't going to draw any attention to it, but I have a slight delay on my end. So if I seem like I'm completely out of sync, that's all on me. I don't know what's happening.
Your delay seems like the episode of The Twilight Zone when the guy gets stuck in the department store and he's trying to tell everybody about the 13th floor, and they're like, "Sir, there is no 13th floor."
Yeah, I'm a little off
because we can't hear your delay. So
okay, good.
Let it go.
Okay, I'm going to let it go. I'm going to pretend it doesn't exist. There's no 13th floor, sir. Okay, good. So
that's right.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Brian Altunian. This is another episode of Just Two Dads. I'm here with my co-host, my partner in Thrive, Mr. Shawn Francis. We want to welcome everybody who's catching us live on Facebook. Please enter your comments and engage with us. We'd like to talk to all of our folks. We've got some people who see our show regularly, and we love the engagement. If you're not catching us live, you catch us on our YouTube channel at We Are Just Two Dads. You can hear us on podcast outlets everywhere and on WSTX AM radio. Welcome, everybody. Really excited about today's episode. Myrna Scales is joining us. And today, Myrna is going to be talking about an issue that I think frightens every parent, dealing with an illness with their child that is again, I don't want to take anything away from the conversation, but it's going to be a life-changing conversation for us, I know for sure, and hopefully it will be for all of you. So without further ado, I want to say hello to my partner and my close friend, now family, Mr. Shawn Francis. How you doing, Shawn?
I am great and ready to get going. I want to make sure that we do as much as we can to be expedient with time. I'm thankful to be here. I'm grateful. But I want to welcome to the show Myrna Scales. Welcome, Myrna.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
And we're happy to have you here. So in a nutshell, we're going to talk about, obviously, your family's resilience and the manner in which you dealt with a diagnosis of an illness of your child. But we'd like to start with a little bit
just to give people context, let's say it's the elephant in the room, right? Let's talk about that, and then I think we should jump into Myrna's origin story, right? Shawn, do you think that's
sure?
Should do that?
Yes.
Context.
Yeah. Well,
right.
And the context is that Myrna has a child that was diagnosed with cancer, and there's two things with that. When we talk about, especially in the areas of personal development, you can't control what happens. You can only control how you respond to challenges in life. And that is generally easier said than done, but worthwhile. But in a case like that, with everything that I just mentioned, it is a whole lot easier said than done. And I can't even imagine what that must be like, but I'm so anxious to hear her story and get the lessons that come from it. And who she is has everything to do with how she responds to that. And so that's where we begin our show with, your origin. Every hero gets their powers from someplace. So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, how you were raised, and how that impacted your ability to deal with a situation such as that.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I'm just so excited to share my story. I was raised in a big family. My parents are both from Haiti. So old school, old fashioned. And I have 5 brothers and I'm the only girl. So
okay.
I grew up with a lot of strong personalities, so
Mhm.
I believe that helped me to be a peacemaker, mediator type of person. Um,
Yeah.
always just trying to like calm everyone down, and I'm really good at seeing different sides of the story, and being able to relate to other people. So I feel like I got my superpowers just growing up with
When we
a lot of people.
when we spoke initially, prepping for the show and everything, did you tell us you were from Haiti? I don't think so. I don't think that came up, did
No,
it?
I don't think so.
Okay, good. Because it's funny because now that you're telling me that, for some reason, I'm not surprised you being from the Caribbean. Brian mentioned in the beginning that we're on WSDX radio in the U.S. Virgin Islands, which is where I'm from. So,
Oh,
um,
okay. That's so cool.
yeah, I kind of sense that, which is interesting. But no, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. I was born in Massachusetts, but my parents, I think they've been in America for about 35, almost 40 years.
Hmm.
But I speak the language, and the way that they were raised, their culture is very different. So
Right.
kind of see both sides of that. But yeah, being raised in a big family, big personalities, I was able to just be able to relate to people and, calm the wars and the fights and all that stuff. And I feel like that helped me, being a mom and going through certain things. I feel like that helped
Hmm.
me.
Sure.
Gotcha. Great. How many siblings?
5 brothers.
No, you did say 5 brothers, and you were the only girl.
Yeah,
Then, yeah.
the only girl.
Wow. 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 How do you think that helped for what we're about to discuss, and how it might have been a challenge?
Um, I think it helped because I don't know, growing up with boys, like certain things don't scare me as much. I don't know. I feel like things that maybe gross out some people, I'm like, oh, well, that's boys.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but also sometimes your superpower can be a weakness as well. Because of me being a peacemaker, I really brought it to the other side where I was like a people pleaser,
Mm.
just trying to
Hmm.
be, oh, well, how do they feel? Make sure that everyone else is happy and not really focusing on me. And
Hmm.
so you can kind of see both sides of that.
Sure. And then tell us about your, college, post high school life and meeting your husband, and how did all that come about?
Yeah. I went to Kennesaw State University in Georgia, and I
Hmm.
met my husband there. I was business management major and he was finance major. Um, so we met there, and we've been together for 10 and a half years, and we'll be married for 9 years next month. So
Fantastic.
yeah,
Fantastic.
Early
he's
happy anniversary.
military. Oh, thank you.
Mm. Hmm.
Yeah, he's an Air Force pilot.
Mm.
So
Okay.
yeah, we're really
We
proud of
thank
him.
him. We thank him for his service.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll let him know.
And he's active still. He's active military, right? He's on active duty now.
Yes. He's reservist,
Okay.
but active duty, full-time job. So
Got it. Got
yeah.
it. And so now let's get into the meat of the subject. So you have two children. Talk
Yes.
about your kiddos.
Yes. So our oldest is Pacer and our youngest is Elliot. Pacer is
Hmm.
6 and Elliot is 3. He'll be 4 in April. Um, and when my husband and I got married, he was going into training to become a pilot. And so we just went straight into training, and, he was always busy. And so we waited a little bit, to get pregnant. And when I got pregnant, when I saw the pregnancy test for our first son, I was
Hmm.
so happy. I always imagine myself being a mom. I'm a nurturer, and a very caregiving type of person. And
Right.
I remember I saw the pregnancy test and I saw the positive, and I screamed. And we had a cat, and the cat was just like, "What is wrong with you?" And I was just so happy. And
Wow.
Pregnancy was great. Labor was great. He was just an awesome baby. He slept. He walked at 9 months.
Wow.
He started sleeping through the night very early on. And
Wow.
like, we're good at this.
We should do this more often.
Yeah.
How did you arrive at the name Pacer?
Oh, my husband is a Indiana Pacers fan.
Oh,
okay. I don't know if it was basketball. I was thinking NASCAR, Indianapolis 500, or basketball. I didn't know which one.
Yeah, it's basketball. Big Reggie fan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That's awesome.
That's got to be kind of tough. They don't have that ring yet.
I know. Oh, he tries every year. He's there. He's rooting for them.
That's funny.
Yeah. But we were so happy. And I remember we were walking around our neighborhood and I was just like, why are we so blessed? Like, we're just so happy right now. Our baby is healthy. We're happy. Like, we were just in a really good part of our lives. And then, what do parents do when everything's going great? Let's have another one.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Yeah. We're great at this. So we're going to do all the same things. We're going to do the sleep routine the same. We're going to feed the same. It's going to be awesome. And so we got pregnant right away, really early on. And we were just really happy and everything was great. All the same things. Pregnancy, I was healthy. The baby was healthy. And then labor was great. And then when Elliot came home, he wasn't sleeping the same, and things that were a little bit easier with Pacer, my oldest, was not the same with Elliot. So I started thinking to myself, like, this feels different. What am I not doing the same things? Is, what's going on? And, when you have a toddler and a newborn, you can't sleep, you nap really. And so it was just a lot harder. But I remember one day I was playing with Elliot and he was 3 months at the time. And he was moving, on my lap. And he wiggled a certain way where I could see a lump on his belly. And I felt it. Yeah, I felt it. And it was firm. And the first thing that came to my mind was constipation, because I was like, please get constipated. And I didn't think anything else of it. But, me as a person, I don't let things slide. Like, once I see something, I'm like, let's call the doctor. Let's go get him checked. So we went the next day with him. And my husband.
Did he have any other signs of discomfort? Was there, to your point, besides not sleeping, which, every child's different, but besides that, anything else, any other kind of signs of an issue?
No other signs. He was really like sweet baby, always smiling, and I remember, like, whenever he would actually nap or sleep, I would take pictures because I'd be like, this is a moment, So we brought him into the doctor and we thought that it was going to be a simple visit. And it turned out to be something that changed our lives. We had plans that day to go, out to eat, go to the park. It was a really nice day and it just all changed in a blink of an eye.
Did he give you a diagnosis instantly or was it something that sort of like then dragged out? How did that happen? Because it's very, Shawn and I talk a lot about the day of diagnosis for parents when their doctor finally says, we've diagnosed your child with ASD,
and they give a word.
Yeah.
Right.
Some word you're like, you got to go home and look it up. So was it that instant? Because it sounds like it's a very similar kind of experience for you. So
yeah, it wasn't instant. It dragged on a little bit. When we went to the pediatrician, she checked him out she did not say much. And then she was like, can I get another doctor to take a look? And, in my head, I'm like, why? Like, he's got constipation. Like, let's give him some apple juice and, things that we do for the babies. And so the other doctor came in and he started, turning off the light and putting a flashlight on his belly. And me and my husband looked at each other and we're like, well, what is this? What's going on? Like, I don't understand. So they left the room and they spoke. And then the doctor came back and said, your baby has a mass. And we don't know more than that. He has a mass in his belly. We called the hospital, the PICU, and they're waiting for you.
Oh my God.
They have a room ready and you have to go there immediately. And our whole world was just like, what?
Wow.
And still at that time, I wasn't thinking cancer.
Right.
Mass, I'm like, is like, I just couldn't.
It's like a bigger, an even bigger. So you go there with a mystery, and the first thing that you get is you go there with a shot of mystery, and you're given a huge mug full of even more mystery, so to speak.
Yeah.
Well, and send you to the pediatric ICU in a hospital. Like, go now, they're waiting for you. That's like, that's
like what?
Oh God.
Yeah.
Couldn't imagine.
Yeah.
That car ride, we were both silent and I was praying in my heart. I know my husband was trying not to cry just because I had a feeling that a lot of things were going to change. And it's like, you still have a 3-year-old that you have to engage with and entertain. And, being a military family, we don't have family close by. So all of this stuff we had to do together and, still be strong for our toddler.
I was just going to say, what we seem to learn here doing the show is what unfortunately is a very common theme, is that it seems like we've had very few people in conversation on the show and in life say that, on the day of diagnosis, our doctor was so patient, so informative, so it's just very matter of fact, blank, and which delivers as much of a blow as the question, the mystery, or the words themselves. So that's, and hopefully that's another example for anybody out there that's listening to know that, as much as it might seem like it, you're not alone, because I'm still blown away by how each person, because I'm sitting there thinking, I would have said something else, something reassuring as you're going, because you came to see me for an answer. I'm going to send you to somebody else, and it's funny because as we work in our work in, financial services, sometimes you sit down with somebody and the area of expertise that you have answers the question that the person has. But you may need to bring somebody else in and you let them know that, you trust that person. This person is going to guide you, going to help you. It's, something reassuring as opposed to just.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I think that they didn't know really too, but I understand that, at least kind of give a little bit of feedback to what we were going into.
Right.
So we get to the PICU and the nurses are waiting there, ready to get started. I was just like amazed at like how everyone was just quick and ready to go. And him
help too.
Yeah. And him being a 3-month-old, having to hold him down to get blood work and, all the wires,
Oh my gosh.
They don't want to do any of that stuff, but no. So the first thing they did was, they did the blood work, they put him on all the monitors, and then they did the ultrasound. And so we had to wait for the ultrasound to come back. And when it did, they were like, we could barely see the kidney because the mass was so big.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And we were just like, okay, and so after that, they were like, okay, now we have to wait for another doctor to come see you. So we did a lot of waiting that day. And so in comes this, really vibrant doctor. She comes in, and the first thing I do is look at her badge, and I see pediatric oncologist.
Oncologist.
And I'm
They
like,
had mentioned cancer to you at that point.
no.
That's so
Yeah. Because I'm thinking
Yeah.
mass. I'm like, what else could it be? I don't understand. Like, no one said that word yet. But when I saw oncologist, I was like, oh my goodness. My heart just sank. It sank.
Yeah.
And the first thing she did was, hi, Pacer, went to my oldest and was like, would you like to go play with some toys in the playroom? And so the nurses came and they took Pacer, and it was like, he can't even be in here. Like, what are you going to say?
And she's doing that before speaking with you.
Well,
with you guys.
In order to speak to them, I'm assuming, so that Pacer could be spared from, mom and dad being upset or whatever. Right. I mean, it's a generous and sweet thing to do. And at the same time, I'm feeling it. Like that would gut me right there. Moment, that would gut me.
Yeah. Just very scary. And, the first thing she said was, she introduced herself. She's really sweet, really nice. And she was like, I think your son has Wilms tumor. And I think it's common in children. It doesn't usually happen in babies this young, though.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And is it a special? So can you describe what that means? Does she tell you what that means, or is it like everybody else? We had to go home and look it up.
She gave me a whole set of like paper because she was like, I know you're going to go Google it. So I'm giving you the right terms and all that stuff. So if you have any questions, you can ask me. But she gave us paperwork. And at that time, she said, let me give you some time to cry and to process this before we start. Because after this, we have to get right to work so your baby can survive. Ooh. And I was just like, okay. And me and my husband, we broke down.
I'm sure.
Sure, of course.
Yeah. We broke down and cried. And afterwards we were like, okay, what do we have to do?
Yeah. From a prognosis in that moment, they can't really, they can't even really say, or did she give you some indication that, this is life-threatening and, children, could die of this? Have they given you at that point? Because as a parent, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking like, oh my God, if that had happened to my child, I would be like, my daughter, by the way, who's on, she often contributes here to, to our podcast. Yeah. I'm just thinking about my daughter, and if that happened to me, my head would be spinning. Did she give you any sort of indication of, like possibility of survival or any of that?
Yes. She told us that survival rate is pretty good. Like 87, 88%.
Okay,
but we helps early. Yeah. The thing is, she wanted to do a CAT scan to look closer to make sure that the tumor hadn't spread.
So it didn't metastasize. Yeah. Yes, right.
Because it was the tumor was coming from the kidney. So it was like the kidney was feeding it blood. It was like a cyst-filled tumor. Gross. But it was getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And just the thought of like where else it could be, I was like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even think of that. Like it could spread to the lungs and the other organs.
Right.
So that was the next step, get the CAT scan done to make sure that it hadn't spread. And then she was like, he needs to have surgery right away. We need to remove this tumor.
Like right away, as in like today kind of thing?
Right away, as in 3 days later.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So how do you, because retrospect and present time are two different things. How did you prepare? So it's like today we're going in 3 days. How did you gear up for that mentally? And at some point you have to, as a parent, we're protectors. So you're like, skip everything else. I'm diving on a grenade, so to speak. How did you get to that point where you're just like being there for him?
I think this is where my weakness came in, where, I'm a people pleaser, and I was just checking with everybody, making sure that Pacer was okay, Elliot was okay, my husband. And I just felt so broken inside. And, it was only 3 months, and I was still healing from pregnancy and labor, baby blues and anxiety, and all of that just magnified even more. I think that I prayed a lot, and I believed in something bigger than me. I believe in God, and I believed that this was for a reason, even though that sounds, crazy, but I'm like, there's got to be a
doesn't.
this.
It doesn't. This doesn't. And it's kind of like there's several things here. You have to believe in something greater than yourself. If the less you can control of a situation and the more grasp you're trying to get on how you respond to it, the greater there is for a belief in something greater than yourself. And for anybody listening, we talk about this all the time. We're not talking about religion. You're just talking about something bigger than you. That's why we always have a question. We ask people that are atheists or don't believe in anything bigger than themselves, what do they do in a situation where it seems like there's just no answer, no one to turn to? So we know that when a diagnosis of anything comes about, whether it's a catastrophic injury, illness, a neurological delay, or whatever the case might be, those are things that strengthen or challenge a union or a marriage. Also, how would you say that affected you and your husband together? Because again, how he responds to that is based upon his environment, his growing up and everything.
Yes. Yeah, that's a big one. It definitely challenged us because I'm an emotional person, and I love talking, I love talking, but I love talking deep into, like what
Talking through it.
Talk through it. That's just going to say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And him, he's like, what does the doctor want us to do? Okay, that's what we're going to do. And he's more factual, and he goes like for a run, and he'll, scream or cry and then come back and be fine. But me, I'm like, let's talk about it. Why aren't you crying?
Right.
Yeah.
And your challenge there is to, because my wife and I are the same way. Now we're more on the same page in terms of talking things through.
Yeah.
But we're the opposite of you guys. Whereas I come from, an environment where like, well, we're going to talk this thing through. We don't go to bed angry, whatever have you, And so what happens is when you find your balance, you find your challenge or each of your gifts can bond to form one new strength, so to speak, if that's the case.
Yes.
Yeah.
I definitely see that. We understand each other better. I mean, when you go through something like that, you just really form a bond that, so yeah, it was challenging, but I understand where he's coming from now, and he understands where I'm coming from now. So we kind of meet in the middle. So it's really helped us. Yeah.
Good. That's great to know. That's great.
So let's just to help everybody, as they process this, as you have the surgery complications during the surgery, or was the surgery relatively successful? How was that process?
So the surgery was supposed to be 4 to 6 hours, and it ended up being 8 hours. And like, if I tell you that I looked like a hot mess, I'm not lying. Like, I was up and down the hallway, just looking like a crazy person. I couldn't sit. I took a picture of him right before they pulled him away, and he just smiled up at us, and like, it's okay, Mom and Dad, I'll be right back. And you just You give all your trust to these people that you've never met to take your baby that you just had.
Yeah.
And, you know, am I going to get to see him again? Like all of these thoughts. And I'm walking up and down like a crazy person. And this lady comes up to me and she's like, "You look lost. Are you okay?" And I told her what was happening. And she was the chaplain in the hospital. And she took my hand and she prayed with me. And it's like God knew that I needed that reassurance and just something to calm me down a little bit. You know, I believe that. And yeah, so after 8 hours, we met with the surgeon, and the surgeon was like, "Your son had a tumor the size of a cantaloupe."
Oh my gosh.
Whoa.
Because his belly was just growing so fast. And I didn't realize how big it was, but he had so much pressure in his belly, and that's why he could never get comfortable.
That's why he didn't sleep. And at 3 to 4 months old, the cantaloupe and he are competing for size, actually.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, after looking at his belly before and then after surgery, I was like, wow, like you could actually see he was kind of getting big on the sides. And I'm like,
you're like, how could we miss that? That happens. Yeah. That's why perspective is so important. Wow.
Yeah.
So next step after they've told you that.
Yeah, the next step was recovering, and we had to stay in the hospital for 7 days for him to recover. And I just want to say that I didn't even know about Ronald McDonald House.
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say, anybody that's responsible, you know, here we're about, let's shine a light on as many people as we can that serve others. So please go ahead and tell us about your experience with Ronald McDonald House and maybe even the hospital that served him. Just go ahead.
Yes. I didn't know about Ronald McDonald House, you know, and so the social work at the hospital told us, and I was like, okay, I called and they were like, yeah, we have a room available. And I'm like, so how much is it going to cost? And she was like, it's free. And I was like, what? It's like a hotel. And she's like, there's food, there's a game room. I'm like, oh my gosh. And
amazing.
That experience was so amazing because my mom and my sister-in-law were able to drop everything and come to stay with us and take care of my oldest son while we were at the hospital, back and forth. And we didn't have to pay for anything. And we were able to see our son every day, both our sons. And now, today, my husband is he's on the board of directors for Ronald McDonald House. And
oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I was just going to say, you know, you think about worthy causes to give to, and we could have, you know, an entire show about nutritional content and whatever have you about the food that McDonald's serves and everything. But when you look at something such as that, that's fantastic. I'm sure that's a whole nother conversation to have. We'd love to have a conversation with your husband at some point, because I know his perspective is going to be different, even though he was there. But the journey to choosing to do that or having the opportunity presented, whichever one it was, that's fantastic.
Amazing.
So please,
such a great
continue.
Oh God, that's so great.
Yeah, we love it. And so the whole thing that was kind of anxiety filled was that even though we knew it was a tumor, even though we removed the tumor, they got all the tumor out, you know, that was amazing. But then we still had to wait for pathology to say if it was cancer or not. So the whole 7 days we're waiting. And, you know, he's a baby, he's in pain. And I cried so much. You don't want to see your kid in pain. You don't want to see, and there's nothing that I could do. I could just be there, you know. But on the 7th day, the surgeon came in to check him and we were about to leave. And he said pathology report came back and it was cancer. So now there's a whole other journey of what does that mean?
Yeah.
Because the surgeon, the size of the tumor and all of the things that happened in the surgery, he put it as a stage 3. So now that it's stage 3 and it's cancerous, what does that mean? And
Right.
we got a call from the oncologist, and she said, we have to get radiation and chemo started within 9 days.
Oh my gosh.
We have to start right away. And
So even though they got the whole tumor out, he still had to go through radiation and chemo.
Yes,
to kill whatever's in the system.
Because it was cyst-filled tumor, when they were taking it out, there was spillage.
Oh my gosh.
And so they took it all out, but they couldn't take it all out in one piece. And so just to be sure
there's
that
something still, some of it is still in there and possible
Yes.
to spread. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So then if you can, if you can, as much as you can, from a layperson standpoint, the first thing you think of is, I'm a little more familiar with that than anyway, chemo and radiology.
Yeah.
How does not just a child but an infant withstand that? Because I'm sure that's probably your question too. How do they explain how that is withstood by an infant, or how does that work?
Yeah. We were asking ourselves that too. And even with the radiation, he had to do 7 rounds, and they wanted to do it back to back to back. And there was a weekend break, and then back to back.
And explain for those that are listening that are not familiar with that, what a round equates to.
Okay, so each round is like a radiation session. So because he was a baby, they made like a I don't know what you call it, but like a shape of him, so he could lay on it exactly, so they could get the radiation and the
like
exact
a mold or something, because he has to sit still underneath the machine while the radiation is targeted at the area where the cancer is or was.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they had to sedate him every single time.
Oh my gosh.
So you have a team of nurses, anesthesiologists, radiology nurses, like all these people monitoring him. And it was every morning. And
so 7 rounds, you're talking 7 days then.
Yes.
Yeah.
7 days. And not only that, he had to have another surgery where he had to have his port be put in.
Oh, for the chemo.
For the chemo.
Yes. Yes. So because for those that are not familiar, you have a port that is surgically put in, and then the medicine itself, the chemo, well, really controlled poison, is then hooked up to the port and then put into the body. And so that's how that's how that's done. And then for those that don't know, what happens is those things help, but at the same time they're hazardous. So you have to actually be careful in use of the restroom and things of that sort after it's injected into the system, so that it doesn't get anywhere else.
Yeah.
It's a personal connection for Shawn, as one of his family members is dealing with this right now. So, that's why there's a relatedness to what it is that you're talking about. And that's why it's hitting Shawn particularly hard today. So we love you, buddy. We're right there with you, my friend.
Yeah.
I know that this is difficult, and listen, just to fast forward the conversation a little bit for those who know that, Elliot has survived this ordeal. He has come through it. And we're sharing, Myrna and her husband's, journey as parents, because as parents of children, we often talk about parents with children with special needs issues and the struggles as we deal with that and what their life looks like. In this particular case, Myrna and her husband were dealing with, the possibility of not having a life beyond this. And so the related component is that, you can hope and you can pray and you put your faith and your trust in doctors and in these kinds of procedures with no knowledge of what the outcome is going to be. And to some people, we've heard stories where the treatment is almost worse than the illness. And I can't imagine, it's tough enough thinking about how an adult would go through radiation treatments like this. And I can't imagine a 3-month-old child. You walked in to the doctor's office because he had a little bump on his tummy, and 2 weeks later you've been through cancer surgery and now chemotherapy or radiation therapy, and oh my God, I could not imagine what that was like for you.
Yeah.
Typically, there's a handful of side effects that that can occur, and for those that have seen, from a distance, stories with regard to cancer treatment, what you're used to hearing is nothing but severe side effects and things of that sort. But there are things that have taken place in the past couple of years where that is not always the case. How did your son fare with regard to how did Elliot fare with regard to his response to the treatment?
Like you were saying, the first chemotherapy session, I couldn't be in the room. I couldn't, because you had to hold him. And I was just like, how can I hold him and sit here while you're giving him something that's going to help, but it's not helping at the same time? I know it's poison. And I left the room, and the nurses came and they hugged me and they said, "It's okay. This is not fair." And I got stronger, and I was able to do it because he had chemotherapy for almost a year. And so
a year.
Jeez.
Yeah. So for the first, year in his life, he was fighting. He's a fighter. And he did really well with the chemo. He lost his hair, and I was thinking, like, maybe he won't lose his hair. But then as a baby, he started pulling and started putting it in his mouth. And so we're like, okay, we have to shave it.
Yeah.
So we went ahead and shaved his head. And, he had other like food allergies and gut issues and stuff. Yeah. But the biggest thing from the chemotherapy was he had neuropathy on his feet, which it caused some numbness on the feet.
Yeah.
And, he was a baby. So those stages of, development.
The milestones and everything. Yeah.
So when it was time for him to walk, his feet were kind of like this.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to bring him to the orthopedic doctor, and he had to wear full leg cast for 4 weeks. And so he would army crawl on the floor. And then after that, his legs got straighter and stronger. We didn't know if he was going to walk.
Oh my gosh.
Right. Now, were you just wondering, or did they actually tell you? Was that just the parent in you, like, oh my gosh, is he going to get to walk because this isn't normal? Or did they tell you that there was a doubt?
It was just like my parent feeling, is he going to walk? Because he was 1, and we were still like with the cast. And then after the cast, he had to wear boots, like orthopedic boots.
Yep.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, this boy learned how to walk with the orthopedic boots on.
I was just going to say something too. We always talk about how when we're born, we're as close to perfect as we're ever going to be, because child doesn't know any boundaries.
Yeah.
What do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a cop, a fireman, a lawyer, and like 5 other things. So you have to choose one. Well, how come? When you fall down, figuratively or literally, blood or none, you get back up and you just go. That's why we got to hold on to all the lessons that our children teach us, so that we can, be remain more childlike, less childish. That is what
Yeah.
has you closer. And you know what it is? Brian talked about it last week. As a child, you're less separated from creation, regardless of what you believe, because you haven't been here that long.
Yeah.
So the idea is to get back to that. So keeping with that theme, he had the chemo for a year, found a way to walk and everything. How many years have passed at this point to this date?
So yeah, it's going to be 3 years in April. He's going to be
And
4.
he's going to be 4, and he is cancer-free.
Cancer-free, vibrant, emotionally intelligent, his teachers say. I mean, just a beautiful, beautiful little boy. And
That's
he
beautiful.
doesn't even know. He doesn't even
That's
know.
the other thing too. Yeah. Now, does he still have sensory issues and things of that sort, as you mentioned?
He runs and he walks like it's like everything that we asked for, we were blessed with. And that's what I want to tell parents, that sometimes the hardest things, you get the diagnosis, you have to go through all that stuff, and you're sitting there and you're like, why me? And you feel so alone. But reach out to other people that are going through what you're going through, because sometimes it was hard for me to talk to other moms that didn't understand, how I was feeling, and I went to some groups like Momcology, and all these moms that have, kids with cancer, and I just felt less alone.
Nice.
Good. And I wanna shift with that a little bit, because again, we're all about shining a light and lifting people up, and your light is just beginning to shine with regard to how you're going to sort of pay it forward coming through that. We've talked about that. There's things you want to do. I want you to talk about what it is that you want to do, what you're going to launch, and we want to help with that in any way that we can. And at the same time, let those that are with us know how they can reach you too, because you have testimony to give, as you have today.
Yes, thanks. I would love to be able to speak on podcasts and speak on stage, just uplifting parents and letting them know that they're not alone. And even when, we think about having babies and having kids, we're thinking about all of the, well, Christmas is going to be amazing and this is going to be great. And a lot of us don't really think about all the what ifs. But if we were to set realistic expectations, like no matter what happens, I'm going to focus on happiness with my family, because that's the end goal. Like we went through a hard time, but at the end of it, we're happy now. And we still don't know what the road has for us, because even when chemotherapy ends, my son still goes to 3-month quarterly scans. He has 1 kidney. It doesn't stop. The anxiety still continues. But instead of focusing on the negative, I'm going to focus on every moment that I have with my son, my kids, and be happy and enjoy that.
There's the lesson right there. There it is.
Yeah.
At this point, I have to say, I feel so differently asking this question than I have with anyone else, because I think your answer is going to be unlike any we've ever gotten before. But our ability to make the world a better place, to change it for the better, depends greatly upon our ability or our willingness to change the way we act and the way we think. So at this point in the show, we'll generally ask if you can give an example of one thought or belief that you held dear for the majority of your life, just so strongly, it's just a part of your being, that you now no longer believe. And there is no wrong answer.
Yeah, I thought about this a lot. And the one thing that I've always done is pray. So I'm not going to say that I don't pray anymore, because I do, but my prayers are different. Both babies, I prayed every night over my belly saying, God, I would love to have a healthy, happy baby. that's what I wanted. And it didn't happen that way. It was a different, unique journey for us. But now when I pray, my belief is I'm going to thank God and I'm going to give gratitude for what I have. I'm not going to ask and ask and ask, because that means that I'm in control and I'm asking for what I want. But our plan sometimes, it doesn't correlate with what is supposed to happen. Because if this didn't happen, I would not be the person I am today. My husband wouldn't be who he is today. And so I feel like a prayer of thanksgiving, a prayer of true worship,
Mhm.
that's how I believe now. That's how I pray.
Powerful.
Fantastic. That's
It's
fantastic.
powerful.
What's your husband's name?
Sterling.
Sterling. Okay, and we know he's going to see this. Sterling Scales. Wait a minute. He sounds like he should be playing for the Pacers.
You love that.
He does playing for somebody or
Yeah.
broadcasting the news or now starting at forward.
Yes.
Wichita State. Sterling Scales. It just sounds right.
Yeah.
It's all right. Pacer Scales has a good sound, good ring to it, and so does Elliot
It sure
Scales.
does.
So.
Yeah.
You
it
know
does.
what? My oldest, his nickname is Pacer. He takes his name after Sterling, so he's a Sterling too.
Love that.
Okay, gotcha.
And he's
gotcha.
tall, you said.
Okay.
He's tall.
Yeah,
He's getting tall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
beautiful. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Well, it's been an amazing conversation. We're always amazed by how fast an hour goes by as we have these conversations. That was I knew that was going to be pulling hard on heartstrings and hitting close to home for some of us. And I thank you so much for sharing your story and giving us an insight into what that's like as a parent dealing with a child who has an illness and coming through successfully, which is so amazing. And then being willing to spend your time to share it with others and be a support for parents and to be out there. I think you had said at one point you were going to maybe write a book, or you're going to do something else to make a difference in people's lives. And we're big fans of continuing to pay it forward. So loved having you here on this. And as we have this conversation, as we wrap up, I say, I always my ending of the show is always about empathy and love. And I think your story is a perfect example of, you never know what somebody else is going through. And so if we just all have a little bit more empathy for those around us, to have some, understanding and again, just put ourselves in somebody else's shoes, would make a huge difference. And then looking at the world through the lens of love, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, make the world a better place. So Myrna, I thank you and, embrace you, virtually here, you and Sterling and your family. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. And for, those of, the folks who watch our show and listen to us, I'm sure that was a moving hour. And so anyways, I want to thank you personally for sharing that story with us. And Shawn can close us out. And but again, Myrna, I'm blown away. Thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Myrna, you might know, especially if you look at older episodes, but you just gotten as close to one we'll ever get to leaving Brian at a loss for words, and that's not easily done. And it takes one to know one. So
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So that's who and how we are. So the first thing I want to do before I just close this out is, where can people reach out to you?
Yes.
I want to make sure you put that in the chat as well.
Yeah. I'm on Facebook. I have a blog on there where I just post inspirational, funny videos, kind of things like that. So I could put the link on there.
Yeah, Instagram as well.
And Instagram as well. Myrna Scales.
Okay. We just started following you during the show, so there you go.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I would just want to make sure that, again, thank you for your time. Thank everyone that tuned in. I want to thank the women in my life without whom I could not be. That is my mom, Jan, and my amazing wife, Laura. And for everyone, just remember that somebody someplace needs to know that you care. They need to know that they matter. They need to know that they're seen, and they need to know that they're heard. And what a great way to kick off, our first guest of the new year. We're looking forward to great things to come. And if you're watching this, we love you.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you again next week.